Vincent Price.
Vincent Price, mi vida de terror. Una conversación del maestro de la amenaza, Vincent Price, con el historiador cinematográfico David del Valle. Era un hombre del Renacimiento con sentido del humor, actor, autor, esposo, padre, un coleccionista de arte que veía arte en todo, un gourmet que adoraba los perritos calientes. Su carrera se extendió a lo largo de 7 décadas y en todos los campos posibles: radio y televisión, el escenario de Broadway, espectáculos en solitario, dibujos animados y rock and roll. Pero el público cinematográfico recordará a Vincent Price como el maestro de la amenaza. Desde el principio de su carrera en Hollywood, en 1939, su voz culta y su porte impresionante significaron actividad notoria. Este hombre cálido, cortés y gentil sufrió durante sus últimos años una enfermedad degenerativa que finalmente acabaría con él la noche anterior a Halloween, en 1993, y la muerte de su tercera esposa, la actriz Coral Brown, en 1991. Pero dejó este testamento al terror, una conversación con el historiador cinematográfico David del Valle sobre las películas que hicieron del nombre de Vincent Price un conjuro a las sonrisas siniestras.
These were romantic films with a gothic overtone, both The Invisible Man and House of Seven Gates. And actually, most of the ones I've done have been in the tradition of the gothic novel.
Well, now when you came back from New York, you went to Universal again and did a picture that would associate you with two gentlemen that would follow you through your career, and that is Boris Karloff and Basil Rathbone.
Yes,
the Tower of London.
Tower of London.
Now, how did that come about?
Well, I wanted to get established playing character parts because I really didn't think I fit in the mold of leading man in the terms of Hollywood at that time. So I talked them into letting me do a smaller part. So I can't remember what it was. I think I was offered the part that Ian Hunter played, the king.
Oh, I see.
But I much preferred the other role. And then, of course, after this comes in Boris Karloff, the executioner, and they throw me into a great vat of wine.
Now, I think you told me that vat had been used for other things before.
Boris and Basil were kidding me. You know, they're saying, "What are you going to do in that vat? It's, you know, it's all such clean water and everything." So they said, "We'll fix you." And they kept throwing cigarette butts and old Coca-Cola bottles and anything they could find lying around the set was thrown into this vat. And when I got thrown into it, I had to go down to the bottom of it and hold on to an iron railing and hold on long enough for them to let the lid down and play a scene. And I said, "Well, what if the lid gets stuck?" And they said, "Oh, don't worry, we got men with axes." Well, the thing was about this thick, and it did get stuck. But they both had an enormous sense of humor about themselves. And I think it's a saving grace for anybody that has to play villains, is to have a sense of humor about yourself. Boris found it hysterical. I'll never forget the first day I met him. He had one shoe that was built up and the other was built up less, so that he sort of wobbled. And he had a pretty peculiar walk anyway, and his head was shaved, and he had a sort of hump on his back, and he had his little daughter on his shoulder, and he said, "I just want her to know that I'm not as mean as I appear."
Had you seen the original?
Oh, yes, indeed. And Claude Rains was a great, great favorite of mine. And I thought that the script was excellent because it really took up where the other one left off. I mean, so many sequels have nothing to do with the original picture at all.
I can leave any moment I like.
Hey, you can't go upstairs.
But this really was a sequel of events.
Take care of yourself, darling.
I'll be all right. Don't look at me like that.
I wanted to ask you about John Fulton, the special effects man, because he is legendary. He did Frankenstein, The Mummy.
He looked like a businessman from downtown Los Angeles. He had absolutely no artistic look or peculiar look in any way. He was the most sort of ordinary businessman-looking man, and he took his work as a business. And he created all those wonderful effects in the original Invisible Man and in mine, too. But in those days, you had to be dressed in black velvet. And the camera was anchored firmly, let me tell you. And then you played the scene the way you would play it, you know, with your regular clothes on. And then you turned to the black velvet, and you got into a black velvet suit, and they covered the whole set, everything with black velvet, so that you disappeared, and then the two films were composited. It took forever. There's a scene in a cornfield where I undressed a scarecrow to become visible. And it took 8 hours to do that scene, which lasted about less than a minute on the screen. I went back to New York and did several plays, and then I did a play which really sort of established me as a villain. A very famous play called Angel Street, called Gaslight. They made the film called Gaslight from it with Boyer and Ingrid Bergman. Laura really made two extraordinary careers, three. It made Clifton, because it was his first picture. And it certainly made Dana. And Jean was on her way, but this was what really established her as a great star. There's this underlying evil in all these characters that Otto really captured.
On a hunt, aren't you?
Yes.
I'm Shelby Carpenter. Want to dance?
I'm not alone.
Oh, you poor girl. I bet he still does the polka.
Yes, Betsy Ross taught it to me. As a matter of fact, she was going to the country to think it
It was
over.
a good picture.
She was extremely kind, but I was always sure she would never have thrown her life away on a male beauty in distress.
Every woman will feel that when it comes
I
to men,
played so many
law
gentle
gets by
men at the beginning of my career that I suddenly wanted to play some villains, and so I got kind of stuck in villains.
Don't worry. I told you I'd bring in the killer today.
This I hadn't seen for years.
Cool. No, I can't tell you now. I'm not alone. You'll see when I come in.
The newspapers. Careful, cautious Richard. Destroying everything he is for the sake of a cheap
Get away from that
you are,
phone,
Paul,
Margaret.
you're going to get it.
Leave that
I'll
phone
enjoy
alone,
telling your
Margaret.
friends
Leave
you
that
know
phone
that
alone.
I've been up to.
And so this was really the beginning of the late wife movement.
Yes, yes,
Price,
yes.
if they weren't dead in the first group.
I got rid of them by the second.
That's right,
Absolutely.
that's right. But it was, of course, House of Wax that began the association with film audiences of you as a master of terror. This was a real turning point for you because you could have gone to Broadway and done We're No Angels.
I had to make up my mind whether I was going to become a movie star, actor, or whether I would go back and continue my career in the theater. I've never known quite which was the right thing to do, but I would love to have done the play, but the people who did the play, it didn't mean anything to them at all. And it was a great hit, the play, and didn't help them at all in their career, whereas House of Wax did change my life. It's one of the great Hollywood stories, is that it was, when they wanted a director for it, they hired a man with one eye who couldn't see 3D at all. Andre de Toth was a very good director, but he really was the wrong director for 3D because he couldn't see. And he'd go to the rushes and he'd say, well, what are they doing? Why is everybody so excited about this? You know, well, it didn't mean anything to him. But he made a good picture. He made essentially a very good thriller. And the tricks were just happened. I mean, there weren't a lot of them. Later on, they threw everything at everybody.
You shouldn't have done that, my dear.
It is, Kathy.
But now your co-star in that, Phyllis Kirk,
She was one of them.
told me that she honestly did not know what your makeup was going to be like.
No, I know it.
And that you really frightened her.
I don't blame her. It frightened me. I don't believe altogether in the makeups. This one absolutely required it because he was burnt. And this was the frightening thing, that it scarred not only his face, but his mind. And it was a very, very great makeup by George Bow, who was one of the great makeup men and didn't get any credit for it because his brother was head of the department at Warner Brothers, Gordon Bow. But I used to get on the air and say it was George Bow who did the makeup because I spent months with him, really. Every morning at 5 o'clock I'd get there. Charlie Bronson was the deaf mute. Igor. Charlie Bashinsky was his name. I've always tried to pin him down to say, wasn't this really one of your very first pictures? I think it may have been his first picture.
I don't recall seeing...
No, I don't think so, but he was wonderful. He had this great face. We are immortalized in the Wax Museum at Buena Park, Charlie and I.
Now, is it true that one evening, for lack of anything better to do, you went down there and replaced your own image?
Yes.
And frightened?
Yes, scared the daylights out of the people. I love doing things like that. I must say it's really fun. It's the only thing that makes playing villains bearable is to make fun of them.
Well, now, this film begat another one called The Mad Magician.
Yes.
Now, that was virtually a remaking, in a way, of the first one, because you're crazed.
But it was a different idea. He killed people, but then he made himself up to look like the people that he'd killed.
That's right.
Which was really kind of fun. And two of the people that I killed and made myself up to look like were great friends of mine. But it was fun to do, and terrible makeup jobs, again, 5 o'clock in the morning. It was a good script.
Well, why don't you laugh now? You left your bag at the studio and took mine by mistake. Where is it?
Oh, Don,
What's the matter? What have you done with it?
I left it in a cab.
Yeah, there's nothing to worry about, mister. I gave it to a cop. You gave it to a cop?
What was in that bag, Don?
It was a head. A human head.
Who are you? You're not Ross. Killed him.
Yes.
It's all right, Don. You don't have to worry about me. I would never turn you in.
My poor dear Claire. Don't you know I wouldn't dare trust you?
One of the actors had never done a screen fight before, and you know, if you follow what the doubles tell you to do and the stunt people tell you to do, you'll never get hurt. But he was absolutely paralyzed, and he didn't watch them, and he thought he could fake it and know how to do it. But he didn't. He picked up the wrong table, one that was not made out of balsa wood, and hit me over the head and just smashed my nose all over my face.
Oh, my God.
Well, it hurt.
And for ages afterwards, you had little bits of wood.
Little bits of wood. I was picking at them a little bit, and then finally I had to have plastic surgery because I couldn't breathe.
Ladies and gentlemen, we present His Satanic Majesty, the Devil.
Beautiful, isn't it? Fair. Trouble with you, Mr. Scratch, is that you know nothing about painting.
I've never pretended to be an art expert.
You did several other cameos and things in the 50s.
Yeah.
But it was your work with William Castle, The Tingler,
Yeah.
House on Haunted Hill.
Now, those were the only two I did.
You did two of them.
But he was extraordinary. You know, Bill really was... I read an article just the other day. I was on an airline going to Florida. And the article in the airline magazine was Whatever Happened to Showbiz. And it was an article about Bill Castle. This is only, you know, Bill's been dead a long time. And it was about the gimmicks that he pulled. Emergo, which was in the House on Haunted Hill.
I'm Vincent Price. You're invited to my party in the House on Haunted Hill, where so far the ghosts have murdered only 7 people. So won't you come and make it 8?
you?
He would kill me if he could.
So far tonight, one of us was almost killed by a falling chandelier. One of us has been driven to the brink of absolute hysteria, and one of us is dead. Were these accidents? Suicide? And we must stay here for 6 more hours.
You ready?
No.
Are you ready, dear?
Yes. Damn you.
And the Tingler, which he wired the seats with little buzzers.
I'm William Castle, and I feel obligated to warn you about the next attraction you will see at this theater. The picture is The Tingler, which I directed. And for the first time in motion picture history, members of the audience, including you, will actually play a part in the picture. You will feel some of the physical reactions, the shocking sensations experienced by the actors on the screen. I guarantee that The Tingler has more shocks per minute than my last film, The House on Haunted Hill.
He had a great sense of showmanship, and I must say he was fun to work with. He was a good director. He wasn't a great movie director, but he knew how to put this kind of film together.
Scream for your lives! The Tingler is used in this theater.
I mean, he had wonderful wild ideas, like the house on Haunted Hill. I invite all these people to my haunted house. Well, he couldn't find a haunted house that pleased him, so he took one of the most famous Frank Lloyd Wright houses here in Hollywood and made this the modern house, the house, you know, the haunted house. But he had wonderful wild ideas. I liked Bill. He was a very nice man.
Well, now, those pictures really put your name over the title as this was the horror star syndrome beginning, you know, from House of Wax and now the Bill Castle movies. But we come to one picture which, like House of Wax, made a fortune and also was like a household word.
Will everyone in the theater hold on firmly to his seat, please?
Stop it! Stop it!
I'm Vincent Price. What unearthly horror did that girl gaze upon? What manner of incredible thing walked beneath that hood? It would be unfair at this time to show you any more of what went on in that laboratory where a man actually dared to play God. So fantastic, words can't begin to describe it. You must see it with your own eyes to believe it. When the fly comes your way.
That was written by Jim Clavell, who then went on to write Saigon and Taiwan and Shogun and everything else. It was a prize short story in Esquire, Playboy. And I thought it was a wonderful film. It was entertaining and great fun.
It isn't like any other fly I've ever seen.
No! Please, look at the fly. I've killed Andre. Please help me. Call the police and...
The charge could only be murder.
We're no mistresses. I had no lovers.
Why did you kill him?
God, don't let it get out.
Inspector, it's in the garden. Come quickly.
But it was fun to do because Bart Marshall, Herbert Marshall, and the two of us really were hysterical, you know, at the thought of having to play a scene in front of this little tableau that was going on. Oh, it was impossible to shoot, you know. I mean, here's this idiot thing saying, help me, and this spider who jumpity jump, and then people would still come up and say, help me.
As God is my witness, I saw the thing. It's unbelievable. I shall never forget that scream as long as I live.
Watch out for it.
Jeff Goldblum wrote me a letter when his version of The Fly came out and said, I hope you like it as much as I liked yours, which I thought was terribly sweet. I'd never met him, and I wrote him back. And I went to see it, of course, his version. I think it was wonderful right up to a certain point at the end.
I hope it's the donut sequence is the one I
Yes,
couldn't
no,
get over.
that went a little too far. And it becomes funny, and this really it didn't. It became a moralistic thing again, you know, which really a good horror film must have a kind of moralistic thing in it. Frankenstein's the greatest example of it. I mean, the moral is do not tamper with God's work. And that's what Mary Wollstonecraft wrote, and what I think Boris brought to the film.
This is the son of the original Fly, daring to explore the forbidden science of transmigration that brought horrible death to his father, as his weird experiments spawned the twisted monstrosities of a living hell.
No, it was ridiculous to shoot it in black and white. I love black and white, but I mean, you do two pictures in black and white, not one in color and the other in black and white. But it was not a bad film. It was quite exciting, as a matter of fact.
Suppose he does come here. What if Philippe does not have the mind of a human, but the murderous brain of the Fly?
Now, what possessed you to do the bat? Was it?
Well, I thought that they would revive it and bring it up to date, because when I was a little kid, I had seen the bat on the stage, and it just frightened me to death. And I thought maybe it could have that same kind of hold on an audience, but it didn't, because it wasn't a good script.
Look, Doctor, the woods are on fire. It's coming this way. We've got to get out of here. Out the back way.
We will. As soon as I provide that body we were talking about.
It's a wonderful story, but it doesn't really hold up.
All right, I'll only be a second. My maid was bitten by a bat.
A rabid bat? Well, I'll know for sure when I get to my lab. I caught the bat.
It happened indoors?
In my bedroom.
How'd it get in?
Well, there are many ways a bat could get in a house.
You ought to know.
Agnes was marvelous, actually. She was a wonderful actress. I did go out on tour with her in Don Juan in Hell. I took over from Charles Lawton. Played about 20 weeks with Boyer and Cedric Hardwick. And I think there comes a time in your career, in everybody's career, as you read about the actors that have made it in Hollywood, there comes a point where you suddenly say, money isn't everything. I want to take a gamble on something I believe in. I believe that the works of Edgar Allan Poe had never really been properly done. And I got to know Richard Matheson, who wrote the script. And I thought he had captured the essence of Poe, not Poe necessarily, because it's very difficult to turn a short story into a long picture.
Hundreds of years, evil thoughts and evil deeds have been committed within these walls. The house itself is evil now.
Here they all are. Ushers.
This is monstrous. Oh, Madeline, come away with me now.
Sam Arkoff and Jim Nicholson seemed dedicated to letting Roger have his head, and Roger had proved himself a really brilliant fledgling filmmaker, and this was his chance to really show it.
But it was your idea to dye your hair
Yes,
white?
because he was a man who had been imprisoned in his house. He would have turned white like a newt.
Where is she? You buried your own sister alive?
I did. But she's dead now.
Happy scene.
The master hand of the macabre creates its masterpiece.
Roger was very exciting to work with. I really enjoyed all the pictures, and Roger had a genius for hiring wonderful people. Really wonderful people. His cameraman, Floyd Crosby, was a brilliant man. Danny Haller, the set decorator, everybody in Marge Corso who did the costumes. It was really, he had this extraordinary talent of hiring the best people, which is really the secret of all great directors' success.
Mr. Barnett. The mutilated victims became the music of his life. The blood of 1,000 men and women was spilled within these walls. Limbs twisted and broken, flesh burned black.
Nicholas.
Is that you, Elizabeth? While we were up here mourning her, she was alive, struggling to be free.
That's a pretty wild performance.
That's pretty hokey.
I'm going to torture you, Isabella. I'm going to make you suffer for your faithlessness to me. You harlot!
You will feel in your very blood.
Do you know where you are, Bartholomew? You are about to enter hell.
I think that the major thing in a spooky film or thriller of any kind is logic. You must believe that what is happening, and you must believe it. Because if you don't, there's no fright. It's what I think is wrong today with some of the fright films, is that they have no logic at all. I mean, things begin happening at the very first scene, and they don't end until everybody has been destroyed.
You will meet the master of the mansion, who loved and protected his wife with the strength of a supernatural love, even beyond life itself.
I am in command here. You will do as I say. I shall take what I desire. Your body and your soul if I demand it.
Now, what would you say changed about Basil from the 30s to when you worked with him at AIP?
Well, I think he was very disillusioned. He was very bitter because he really had been a great star, and people kind of forget that because they think of him as Sherlock Holmes or they think of him as a villain. But he had been a great Shakespearean actor, a great star in the theater and in movies, and he suddenly found himself, as we all did, when Jimmy Dean and Marlon Brando and those people came out, and it was a kind of speaking in the vernacular, and all of us spoke with trained accents and trained English, and theatrically we were different in our approach to acting. And if you wanted to stay in the business, you bloody well went into costume pictures and stayed in costume pictures. And we did, and we all did very well with them, but we didn't fit into the other group. And Basil rather resented that.
It all started at the Vintners Convention, where the lover of wine met the professional wine taster and introduced him to his wife, a darling who delighted in dalliance.
What kind of a man are you anyway? Make love to my wife and doesn't even talk to me.
You're insane.
That may be, but very clever.
Help! Help!
You told me that he would always send himself up.
He'd do his own imitation by holding his nose, and he sounded exactly like Peter Lorre.
Was he a happy man towards
No, he wasn't a very happy man. He was a sad little man. He put on too much weight. He was not well. He really never learned the script. He felt that he could improvise it and make it better. And in many cases he did, but there were also scenes. There was one scene where we had to get from one place to another, and I said, "Oh, Peter, come on, don't ad-lib. Just say the lines." He said, "You want me to say the lines, old boy?" And I said, "Yes, say them. Let's get on with it." He knew every line.
True terror is the soft, cold caress of the raven's wing.
Your hands are so cold.
The mysterious powers of black magic. These you will explore.
Now, what is it you need? You got some dried blood of a bat in the house?
The raven will take you careening through the darkest of dangers. Into the ominous
Boris was a
mystery.
divine man.
Magicians.
He was this dear, charming man. He remained a great, great friend of mine.
dear?
But Boris was one of the most joyous men I ever met in my life. A happy, funny, witty, brilliant, kind man.
And he had a wonderful
And Chris
life.
Lee is, too. Christopher is a very, very dear and funny fella.
But we go back to Bela Lugosi. And,
Well, Bela really was
Cheney
stuck
too.
with a character, you know. He was stuck with Dracula. And I think that upset him terribly. He had a bad time with the language, and he had an unhappy experience with illness and dope, apparently, from what I hear. And he was an unhappy man. That doesn't make for a very happy man. And, you know, I mean, people ask me if it worries me that I got typecast. I really didn't, because I spent half of my life at that period sending myself up in Red Skelton shows and Jack Benny shows and with all the comics. And this Peter Cushing was very impressed with the fact that I could send myself up. Because I think you have to do it. I don't think you can take it seriously. Otherwise, you're walking around in a cape.
Don't age for that reason. I mean,
they go on playing. I think because I had a sense of humor about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you always laughed at yourself.
Oh, yeah, I found them hysterical.
You worked twice with Jacques Tourneur.
Yes.
Who, of course, had done Cat People.
Yes, he was
for Val
wonderful.
Lewton and was very respected as a director of fantasy.
Yeah. Oh, no, Jacques was a marvelous director. When we did Comedy of Terrors, he was wonderful.
Starring Vincent Price, who, inspired by a seductive woman, is overpowered with lust to kill. Peter Lorre, too sensitive for both the life he lives and the lives he takes.
Butterfingers.
Boris Karloff, the ancient one, with a fount of sweet memories.
Alexander the Great embalmed in honey, so they say.
And inimitable Basil Rathbone.
You're here because you're dead, Mr. Black.
The hell I am.
If they become too hammy without your knowing that they're hammy, then they lose the audience. Then the audience will begin to laugh. And I think it's a great technique. I remember one time when Boris and Peter and I were working, and Playboy or Esquire, somebody sent somebody out who was going to do a very facetious and mean article about us, we found out later. And he came on the set, and he was terribly impressed with us. He was terribly impressed that we really considered what we were doing as a job to be done well. That frightening people is something that you have to think about, that you can't just allow it to happen. And the article came out to be a sort of great hymn of praise to all of us for the way we worked together.
Peter Lorre, you spoke at his funeral. In fact, you read his eulogy.
Yeah, I wrote
and
his
that,
eulogy.
And in that, you called him a facemaker.
He called himself a facemaker. Peter always referred to actors as facemakers. So anybody who knew him, and really a eulogy is for the people who know you or knew you. And I used this expression of facemaker because it was Peter's definition of actors. He was being facetious, of course, but he thought of actors as people who made faces for a living. And he had a face to make, too.
The Haunted Palace. You who find a kind of macabre joyousness in the horrifying will enjoy yourselves as in ecstasy in The Haunted Palace.
And I guess it was the only time you worked with Lon Chaney Jr., The Haunted Palace.
The Haunted Palace.
Now, that was really H.P. Lovecraft.
Sure.
But that film had a nice, rich look.
It wasn't bad. It was a good idea and a good film. I don't know why they couldn't have just left a Lovecraft title to it.
You see? He's taken her mind, her soul, just like the others.
Really, this is outrageous.
And they're alive! And let's think about it!
From this night onward, you shall bear my curse.
Burn him!
Surely after all these years, I'm entitled to a few small amusements.
But now, what was Lon Chaney like? Because you were...
Well, he was very ill at that time, and I had admired him enormously and always wanted to meet him, and he was really not very happy and not very well, and I didn't really get to know him very well. Spent a lot of time with him trying to talk to him and make him cheer up, but I couldn't do it. He was sick.
Mask of the Red Death, personalized by the motion picture screen's Prince of Horror, Vincent Price.
Carrozzo.
No, I beg of you. Mercy, mercy.
Yeah. Roger, he allowed people to do things. And then when we did the Mask of the Red Death in London, Nicholas Rogue was the cameraman on that, and he allowed him to have his head and make these extraordinary sets. It's a very exciting picture, visually.
I want to help save your soul so you can join me in the glories of hell.
No, never.
Hazel Court is not only a tremendously beautiful woman, but she has a great sense of humor.
Oh, she's wonderful. No, she's more fun to work with. I think we did 2 together, Hazel and I.
Lord Satan, send me a demon, so I may know I'm to be your wife.
Each man creates his own heaven, his own hell.
Let me see your face.
The Mask of the Red Death had nothing to do with Edgar Allan Poe whatsoever, really.
Now, what are your favorites out of the Poe series? Which one?
You mean of the well, I think I like The Tomb of Ligeia. It had a wonderful atmosphere about it. We did it in a 12th century abbey in a marvelous location. You know, though, after I finished all of these, I did a thing called An Evening with Edgar Allan Poe. You've never seen this,
No,
and I will show it to you someday, because I did 4 Poe stories, absolutely pure Edgar Allan Poe, without a word by anybody else, no changing of the plot, just as monologues, with action and with set and with costumes. It's probably the best thing I ever did. They showed it to the exhibitors, and it was an hour long, to television people. They said, it's too serious. It isn't like real Edgar Allan Poe, but it was the real Edgar Allan Poe.
Well, now, was this shown on national television?
Yes, and won all kinds of awards, but it was too absolutely perfect Edgar Allan Poe. It's probably the best thing I ever did in the way of Poe.
Wherever evil exists in the heart of man, the Horla lives. Would you like to know the secret of the Horla's mysterious power? Come then with me, and I will lead you into the dwelling place of evil itself, where you too will be possessed.
Yeah, I believe in work. I don't understand the new thing where the people do a picture like once every 3 years. I just don't understand that. How do they...
$8 million.
I know, but how do they learn their craft? You know how they learn their craft? And it was much more fun doing a picture for Bill Castle for nothing and taking a percentage on it and finding out that you had contributed something to make the money, not being paid before you made the money on it.
Vampires, alive among the lifeless, that make the night hideous with their inhuman cravings. If they are not destroyed in the flaming pits of hellfire, or staked to the ground in the light of the sun, will the unbelievable become real? A world of inanimate zombies by day, irresistible, horrifying attackers by night. Can a zombie woman's hunger for love repopulate the earth?
how come you never played Dracula?
I did once in a thing called
F-Troop.
F-Troop, yes. I played Dracula's cousin who had to leave Transylvania because he couldn't stand the sight of blood.
Were you ever offered?
Yes, I was, but I never really wanted to play it. I felt it belonged so much to Bella.
Or to Christopher.
Yeah, or to Chris, yeah.
My brother Edward has died.
Where is he going to be buried?
As soon as you found another body.
Do you realize the penalty for body snatching is hanging?
You're a forger and an embezzler, and now you're going to become a body snatcher.
Chris and I worked together on it. We laughed a lot. They weren't above just making a picture and putting an Edgar Allan Poe title to it.
Who spurs the beast the corpse will ride? Who cries the cry that kills? And Satan questioned, who replied? Whence blows this wind that chills?
What if there is a power that we know nothing of?
Vincent, you don't read that line with much conviction. I said, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Edgar Allan Poe probes new depths of terror. Vincent Price reaches new heights of horror.
You will each be tied in a prescribed fashion and cast into the moat.
Only from the pen of Edgar Allan Poe could come such an horrendous tale of terror. The Conqueror Worm, starring Vincent Price in the most diabolic role of his career.
Look for the devil's marks upon him. Get on with your task.
It's a film called Witchfinder General in England and The Conqueror Worm over here to tie it in with the Poe series.
Men sometimes have strange motives for the things they do.
I know.
It's a completely different characterization for you.
Well, Mike wanted him absolutely cold, without an emotion of any kind. This is as close as he ever comes to having an emotion, and it's an evil one.
But this was directed by a very talented young man who tragically died at the age of 25 named Michael Reeves.
Yes.
Because you were asked to drop a lot of mannerisms and play it as a complete icy villain.
Reeves, Michael, didn't really know how to deal with actors. He never had. He'd done only one picture. He was only 20, I think, when we started this picture. And he really got all our backs up. I mean, he'd come to you and say the one thing that you shouldn't tell an actor that gives him no security at all. And we didn't get on at all, but I agreed with what he wanted. I think I understood what he wanted. And I think it's one of the best performances I've ever given, plus the fact that I think it is a classic picture of its kind.
He's a man who's out to kill both of us.
And it appears to me that we should take steps to see to his death first.
Now, with the Dr. Phibes movies, you came kind of full circle with the self-parody, because here you are doing a parody of your House of Wax makeup with all of the trappings of the Poe.
But they're wonderful pictures.
Who's this?
I loved them. They were brilliantly witty and cleverly thought out, and I think he was... Bob Foust is one of the best directors I ever worked with in my life, because he was making mad films, and he's a mad man.
9 shall die, 9 eternities in doom. Because of boils, of bats.
Frogs?
Frogs, yes. And because of blood.
Now, how long did that makeup take?
That only took about 2 minutes because it was a mask.
So you just got to, but you had the scene where you have to put bits and pieces
Yes.
of your...
But what we invented a wonderful makeup for it. They just covered my face with collodion, which is like new skin, you know, so that I really couldn't move. I was immobile, and I was talking out of a thing in my neck, a voice box. So that I learned the lines, but never had to speak them, which made Joe very angry. He used to come to me and say, "You're unfair. You're not speaking the lines, and I'm having to remember all mine and say them." I said, "But I remember them, Joe."
Your wife, no vibes. But you I will kill.
But you can't, Doctor. I am already dead.
They made a lot of money, those pictures. They were very successful.
Now, this is the Abominable Dr. Phibes is your only film appearance with Joseph Cotton.
Yes, except I worked with Joe in the theater, you see, with Orson Welles. When I was in the Mercury Theater, Joe and I did Shoemaker's Holiday together. So Joe has been a lifetime friend of mine.
He has nothing to say, sir.
Touché, Dr. Phibes. And as another victim falls, the world awaits your next blow of vengeance.
It was a moneymaker, but it didn't make the kind of money the first
Oh,
one.
I think it was a very funny movie, though. But, you know, sequels are always difficult, aren't they? They really are. There's not very far you can go with a sequel. You're just carrying on a story that ends at one time, and then they get successful and they bring it back. There were some funny things in the second one, though. Really very funny.
More interesting ways to do away with.
Yeah, but it's...
But all of this kind of culminated in what I think is one of your best films all around, and that's Theater of Blood.
Yes, I think it's the best one,
Which
actually.
originally was called Much Ado About Murder, which I think is a marvelous title. I mean,
But they were all about Shakespeare, yeah.
There's so many in
But you know, we'd had a thing when they did another picture, and we called it The Comedy of Terrors. There was a very definite antipathy with the audience of combining Shakespeare and a murder story in a title. And comedy and terror didn't go together at that time. It would now, and it would have even later on in my career. But it was very annoying, and I'm sure that's why they cut the Shakespearean title.
Lionheart truly believed he was the greatest actor of his time. So when
This film, though, of course, has many connotations for you because you met your wife.
Yes, met
on
Coral.
the set.
Quite insane.
Robert Morley, Jack Hawkins, they were absolutely fabulous and so wonderful to work with. Dennis Price, wonderful.
Robert Coote.
But of course, Edward Lionheart was dead. So that was impossible.
Oh, impossible.
Or was it?
Good day, Mr. Devlin.
I'm sorry to have missed the meeting, but my heart is with you.
Can't believe it. His head cut off.
That whole picture was imaginative and good.
On fire! Consume this happy world, and in its ashes, let my memory lie.
I really sort of look back on my career with great joy because one of the things that you haven't covered, and it's very difficult to cover, is the television appearances.
You've done.
I've done hundreds of television shows, and some of the ones with, with Jack Benny and Red Skelton, where I sent this character, Vincent Price, up, were really kind of masterpieces in their miniature way. And a couple I did with Carol Burnett, which were great fun to do. I love doing that.
Vincent, I want you to know this has been an hour that has flown by.
Well, I've enjoyed myself.
I think you're just the best.
Oh, bless you.
And thank you.
Thank you very much, David. It's wonderful. You are the most persistent man. You've really been after me for a long time.
Only been 4 or 5 years.
I know, and I've enjoyed myself. So there, it's been my loss.